Hey guys, it's Ashley and welcome to my video for the Prepare for the Supernova read-along. So if you have no idea what that is that I'm talking about, let me explain. This whole read-along revolves around the Renegade series by Marissa Meyer, which if you have not read yet, you are severely, sorely missing out because it's such a good series that I've talked about it so many times on my channel and I love it to death. So highly recommend just even starting it. But this read-along is to prepare for book 3, which is coming out this year, called Supernova, and in preparation for that, Fierce Reads has chosen a few booktubers and bloggers to recap Renegades and Archenemies to prepare for the release of the third book. I was lucky enough to get one of those spots, and so today I am hosting the final third of Archenemies, the recap. If you've never read this series and you want to catch up before the third book starts, or if you have read and you don't feel like going back through and rereading completely, I'll leave the links to everybody's videos down below, which includes Emma from Emma Books and Alexandra from Twirling Pages and a few other people, including Fierce Reads. We've all made recap videos revolving around the events that happened in Renegades or in Archenemies, so definitely check those out because Supernova is going to be so good. I can feel it right now. It is going to be so, like, chef's kiss good. I'm so excited. And I will not wait a full year to read it like I have every other sequel, okay? Okay, just glad we got that through. Hey guys, so this is future Ashley popping in the beginning of this video because I've already filmed this entire video and realized I didn't mention the giveaway that I have planned, so here we go. I'm working with Fierce Reads to give away a bunch of cool Renegades themed items to you guys, so check out my Instagram for the photo that I'm posting on the same day that this video goes live to give something away to you. You guys have the opportunity to win some awesome Renegades themed merchandise, including this cool Renegades lunchbox, these Renegades and Supernova themed sunglasses, a Renegades art print, a Marissa Meyer signed book plate, this Universe of Marissa Meyer tote bag, which I have already been using constantly because it's a very nice tote bag, and a final copy of Supernova. So again, if you are interested, please check out my Instagram and my most recent Instagram post for a chance to win. Links in the description below. Go find my Instagram. Go find the post. Go enter. Anyway, back to regularly filming me. So like I said, today I am going to be recapping the latter third of Archenemies by Marissa Meyer, which includes chapter 31 to the end. I've reread both Renegades and Archenemies about a few weeks ago to prepare for this, and I have thorough notes, so I'm very ready to jump into this. And if you guys want to know any more, be sure to check out the description down below. Otherwise, be prepared to be spoiled because that's literally all this video is. So I'm super excited. Yeah, that's about all I got. So let's jump into this thing, shall we? Like I said, we're starting on chapter 31. So chapter 31 involves Nova at Adrian's house. So Nova shows up to Adrian's house, which obviously he lives with his two dads, Hugh Everhart and Simon Westwood. And her main mission is to try to find the healing charm that Adrian found in the vaults so that she can use it for when, you know, she concocts this plan to use Agent N against the Renegades so that she is immune to it. So her plan is to go undercover and find that, but to do that she has to get to Adrian's house because Adrian has the healing charm. So she shows up and it's this really cute scene. Adrian has actually painted Nova's dream as a mural in his art room, and it's so nice. It's such a cute scene. They step inside and he brings it to life with his power, and it is so cool because, like, I don't know, if a guy ever did that for me, I would just, like, be kind of overwhelmed, so I can kind of understand what she's feeling in that moment. She's kind of awestruck in the moment. They talk a little bit, and then she ends up falling asleep inside of his art studio for 24 hours. When she wakes up, she's kind of scared because she realizes two things. Well, actually three things. One, his dads are now in the house, which is great because they didn't even know she was there to begin with. Two, Max probably took some of her power in book 1 when she went into his quarantine and she tried to save him, and he, you know, kind of absorbed some of her power, which meant that now she is able to fall asleep in certain circumstances. And 3, those certain circumstances are so long as she feels safe, which means she felt safe with Adrian in his art studio, surrounded by her dream. And she does not know what to make of these things. And then the one part that I'm, like, still so pissed off about, she wants to kiss him. She wants to kiss him so bad, and yet she chickens out because of her stupid mission. So damn you, Nova. Damn you. So they end up leaving the art studio and they go upstairs to have dinner with his family. They sit around the table, they eat pasta. Nova's a little jumpy. She kind of messes up her backstory a lot because like maybe her dad was supposed to be something and her mom was something else, and then she switches it around, and then something on her father's side is like what really gave her her last name, which is not what they decided on in Renegades, but I really don't think that it matters, especially because at this point they drop a whole lot of information on us and we've got to be ready to have it all sink in. So according to the Dread Warden and Captain Chromium, the Sentinel is still alive, obviously. He is the one who supposedly tortured and killed Hawthorne, and then he attacked Frostbite's team, which we know is not true, but they have absolutely no idea. So that's very frustrating to us and obviously to Adrian, who doesn't take this well. Then we find out that the Sentinel actually looks just like the comic book character that Adrian drew when he was younger called Rebel Z, which we do know that he modeled the suit after that character, but it's kind of a little worrisome that, you know, Hugh and Simon are seeing this similarity because it just goes to show how close it is to his cover being blown. Simon then asks Nova how her work in the artifacts department is going and asks her if she's found Ace's helmet yet, because he knows that it's locked in the chromium box and he's just trying to see if she's like believes that it's safe or not, because that's the story that she was playing off earlier. And then Hugh lets slip that possibly a weapon made of chromium would be able to break the box open, which is really good for her because she wants to get that box open at all costs. We hear that the gala that the Renegades headquarters puts on every year is tomorrow night, the night after this dinner is happening, and then Nova, at the very end of this dinner, believes herself to be Nova McLean, the superhero and the fraud. Which is true. It's pretty true. So the next chapter is one of my favorites, but also one of the most frustrating, annoying chapters that I've ever read in any book whatsoever. So Nova and Adrian go back into his room to watch a movie, and they go sit on the couch. He asks her to go to the gala with him, which is one of the cutest parts of this entire book. And then they end up kissing and they end up making out, and it's so great because we've been waiting for this moment ever since Renegades, ever since the middle of that book. We have been waiting for this moment, and it's finally here. And instead of giving into it like she's wanted to do the entire story, Nova just puts him to sleep with her power so that she can find the stupid vitality charm. Her mission comes above all else, and this includes love. And I do not appreciate this. So Nova searches the house. She ends up in their office, which she finds Adrian's old comics, and then she ends up in the kitchen, and she ends up finding the vitality charm in the broom closet where all of their costumes are, which is kind of surreal for her to see. And she nearly gets caught by Simon, by the way, so she's really not as stealthy as she thinks she is. So she ends up going back into the basement and back into the art studio where the mural is still lifelike. And she ends up going all the way around the statue to where she explained to Adrian before that the statue in her dream was holding what she thought was a star. And so she goes up to the statue and finds that it's still holding that star. She goes to touch the star, and the star brightens and ends up morphing into something that ends up going into her bracelet. So now she's got this like glowing stone sort of thing in the bracelet where there used to be nothing, and I'm very confused as to what that has to do with anything, but I guess we'll find out soon. So she ends up back on the couch with Adrian right as he wakes back up, and so she pretends that he fell asleep during the movie, and then she ends up leaving. Nova McLean, the superhero, and the disappointment. So Nova ends up back with the anarchists at the bottom of the cathedral, and she starts devising this plan on how they're going to get the helmet during the gala. During this conversation, she sees one of Dana's monarch butterflies floating around the cathedral, spying on them, and she goes to a mad dash to catch it because she knows that if the butterfly comes back in contact with the swarm, she can turn back into Dana, and then she can go tell everybody that Nova is a complete fraud and a liar and an anarchist. So they capture the butterfly to keep the butterfly away from the rest of the swarm so that Dana cannot transform again. This poses a major, major problem to Nova's plans because her whole plan was that nobody knew that she was an anarchist. Nobody knew that she was Nightmare. And so now that Dana knows this information, it is imperative that Nova keeps her away from the rest of the Renegades. This is one of those moments that I had been anticipating the entire book, because the entire time we're reading this book, starting with the introduction of Agent N, Dana has been suspicious of Nova. I don't know what she had thought Nova was doing, but she's been very suspicious and kind of wary of Nova, and so this is the moment that everything just has a turn. Everything just turns 180 degrees and starts going badly for Nova. So chapter 36 is when the gala begins. So we follow Adrian as he is helping decorate the gala and then eventually ends up going to it. He's very confused as to how he could fall asleep in the middle of a kiss, but he doesn't put too much thought into it because people are wondering where Dana is, and then Nova arrives and she is drop dead gorgeous and they have a very cute moment, and then they go and dance. Before they dance though, they do take a little like sideshow into the like Renegades gift shop kind of thing, and they talk a little bit about Renegades and the power dynamic and stuff like that, which is a big theme in this book as to when one group has all of the power, what does that make them? Does that make them the superheroes, or does that make them the villains? The Renegades want to get rid of people with powers who don't follow their rules. So does that make them dictators? Or does that make them the good guys? Chapter 38 is such a tiptoeing chapter for me. It gives me such anxiety to think about this chapter, because this is a chapter where they're dancing and Nova literally slips up so many times and almost gives herself away. First of all, in the middle of their conversation, Nova calls Adrian a neophyte, which is what Nightmare called the Sentinel in the very first or second chapter of the Renegades, when they are at the parade and the Sentinel attacks Nightmare, and Nightmare calls him a neophyte, which means an amateur. Nova calls him a neophyte and he says neophyte, and she goes, yeah, it means amateur, sorry. And he goes, no, I know. And then he thinks about Nightmare. So he's starting to put two and two together, and this gives me such anxiety because I'm so scared for this moment. I am so afraid. So then after they finish dancing, Oscar steals Nova away and asks her for advice on how to talk to Ruby. They have some really sweet moments and really sweet like words together, and it makes this so much sweeter knowing that Nova is about to ruin the entire thing. It gets to the point where Nova has to leave soon if she wants to go through with this plan that she's devised, and so she says goodbye. Adrian kisses her in front of everybody, and she ends up meeting with Leroy and Honey, waiting in a parking lot, I believe, waiting for her to show up. Honey then doubts her loyalties because she believes she's growing too close to the Renegades, but they go through with the plan anyway. Chapter 39 is another one of those anxiety-ridden chapters for me because all of this stuff goes wrong. So we start off with Nova donning her Nightmare outfit. She ends up going into the back way of the Renegades headquarters and scaling the building. She enters through a window, and then she makes it to the security office where she gets stabbed by Stingray, but then puts him to sleep and turns off the security cameras. She goes down to the archives room to get the helmets, but Callum tries to stop her by making her see the wonder in things, and she ends up putting him to sleep too because, you know, he's in her way. She then tries to use the Silver Spear, which is Captain Chromium's weapon, to break the box. But, and this is also what confuses me about her bracelet, only when a burst of energy comes from her bracelets can she have the strength to break the box open and get Ace's helmet out. So what is this star made of, and what is happening with the energy in her bracelets? I also didn't mention earlier that Magpie, around the gala time when she was dancing with Adrian, grabbed a hold of her wrist and asked what the hell was in her bracelet because it was giving off energy like nothing she had ever felt before. So this just goes to show that this is not a normal thing, and I really want to know what it has to do with everything in this story. So we switch back to Adrian for a little bit as he is leaving the gala, and he's thinking about what kinds of things that he can draw Nova and make for her when he sees one of Dana's butterflies trying to get his attention. He follows it all the way to the ruins of the cathedral where the anarchists, and Ace Anarchy specifically, always meet up and live, and that is when he chooses to call for backup. Before he can enter the cathedral, Phobia appears and makes him see one of his worst fears, which is watching his mother fall from the sky, because Lady Indomitable died that way, and so that is what he always thinks about. And so right as that happens, he dons the Sentinel suit before Ruby and Oscar arrive. Chapter 41 is one of those chapters that I have been waiting for since the beginning of this story, when we found out that Adrian was the Sentinel, and that is when they fight Phobia, the Sentinel, Ruby, and Oscar, and then Adrian then reveals himself and his identity to his teammates. They're shocked and they're angry, but they quickly get over that when they realize they have to fight Ace Anarchy. So then we switch back to Nova. So Nightmare ends up coming out with the helmet, and Gargoyle attacks and captures her. They exchange a few words, and Frostbite tries to neutralize her by shooting a dart into her chest, but she's wearing the Vitality Charm and it literally does absolutely nothing. Then she sets off one of her Agent N bombs that she's created with the help of Leroy, and she ends up neutralizing Gargoyle. She then tries to escape, but Aftershock stupidly starts an earthquake in the middle of a high floor in this building and creates a giant chasm in the middle of this building, which goes straight through the quarantine and completely breaks apart everything. Like, what kind of an idiot do you have to be to cause an earthquake and a chasm to open on like the second or third floor of a building? Especially a building and a floor on the quarantine wing. Like, are you stupid? Every time I read that chapter, I'm just blown away by that fact. I'm like, are you literally stupid? Then we switch back to Adrian. So Adrian, Ruby, and Oscar end up fighting Ace Anarchy and they knock him out. This is one of my favorite parts of the book because Ace Anarchy says a few things that basically hint that they already know Nightmare, but it's so funny because they just don't they don't think about it that hard. They just think that he's a crazy old man and he's an anarchist and he's trying to throw them off the trail. But in reality, he's really giving them good information. For instance, he says something in the beginning when he meets Adrian and he says, I believe you know my niece, which they take to think means Nightmare, but he really knows means Nova. So Ruby has the idea to take a skull and write, "Consider this a peace offering from the Sentinel," on a skull and places it next to Ace Anarchy. She then calls for backup so that the Renegades can come and get him and, you know, take him back to headquarters, and so that they think that the Sentinel is not so much of a bad guy after all. This is one of the things that she does to try to prove to Adrian that, like, yes, what you've done is a horrible, horrible thing, keeping the secret from us, but I will be willing to help you. Then Max sends them a message through their bracelets that Nightmare has broken into the Renegades headquarters and that he is going to try to stop her. Chapter 44 is one of my least favorite chapters of the entire book. Everything goes down. First mistake, Max turns invisible to try to stop Nightmare, which is a horrible, horrible idea. Aftershock then gets hit with the dart and becomes neutralized. Frostbite then tries to kill Nightmare by driving the spear through her, but instead stabs Max in the stomach because he's invisible and was coming up behind Nightmare. When Nightmare dodged out of the way, Frostbite hit Max. When Frostbite got close enough to Max, he started absorbing some of her power, so he started forming ice crystals over his wound. Frostbite freaked out because she didn't want her powers to be taken, and instead of worrying about this child, worrying about this young boy being stabbed because of her actions, she retreats to the other side of the building and tries not to let him take her power. Nova gets really, really pissed about this because she really cares for Max, so she rushes over to Frostbite and demands that she give him all of her power. Frostbite refuses, so Nightmare puts her to sleep and drags her over to Max, where she then absorbs all of her power and is able to cover his wound with ice. And the Sentinel shows up, and Nightmare, who is also Nova, and the Sentinel, who is also Adrian, Nightmare ends up running. So Adrian sees Max and rushes him to the hospital as fast as possible, still in the Sentinel suit. When he gets to the hospital, he realizes that they are way too reliant on prodigies and prodigal? I can't say the word. Prodigy doctors is what I'm trying to say. Because when they get to the hospital, the people immediately call for prodigy doctors, and when they come, Max starts to suck their powers from them, and Adrian is screaming, "You have to get a regular doctor, he can't be seen by a prodigy doctor," and they're like, "Why do you want a regular doctor?" And Adrian's like, oh my god, we're too reliant. Nova was right. In that moment, when he believes that Max is going to die, he vows to annihilate Nightmare, no matter what it takes. So chapter 46 is the last chapter of the book, and this is kind of where things begin to set up for the next story. We're back with Nova. They are in her house. The anarchists just cannot believe that Ace Anarchy has been captured by the Renegades, and they find out that he is set to be publicly neutralized within the next, I believe, few days, if not few weeks. But few weeks seems like too big of a timeline, and I forgot to write it down, so I'm gonna say within a short period of time, he's set to be publicly neutralized. Then she gets a visit from Adrian, who shows up at her house. He basically unleashes his feelings and starts crying, and it's very adorable, except knowing the circumstances, it's a little bit less. Then he says a few things that gets Nova's heart beating. First, Max is not dead, which he takes as a relief. And second, he asks if Nova will help him try to destroy Nightmare at whatever cost. And Nova, of course, says yes. Dun, dun, dun! And that, ladies and gentlemen, was the last third, chapters 31 to 46, of Archenemies. Like I said, so much happened in the latter half of this book. It is insane. So many things happened, and so many like loyalties were crossed, and steps were climbed toward the truth, and things were just unraveling at a rapid pace. And I am so excited to read Supernova because I need to know when they're gonna find out that Adrian is the Sentinel, Nightmare is Nova, and what's gonna happen when that happens, and it's gonna be so great. Some of my predictions and some of the questions that I have, first of all, like I've already talked about, what is the star that is in Nova's bracelet? It is confusing to me, it doesn't make any sense to me. I believe it has something to do with her father's power, but to be honest, I truly don't know. Second, I had this idea when I was reading that her father's power, from what I've gathered, because he created Ace Anarchy's helmet, and they constantly say without the helmet, Ace Anarchy is just not as powerful. Nova is believing that if she gets the helmet and gives it to Ace, he will be able to stop the renegades like he used to, even though he's a frail, fragile old man now. So something about her father's power enhances other prodigies' powers, which then makes me think, Nova has been wearing this bracelet for years and has never taken it off. So what if her not being able to sleep is just her own power being like exemplified because of this bracelet? Like, I get that it also could have something to do with her PTSD from seeing her family shot to death right in front of her, but what if? What if something about the bracelet on her wrist gives her her father's power? I don't know. I really don't know. I'm so confused, but her father's power definitely enhances other prodigies' abilities. So just like, what if? That's all I can keep thinking about. What if? Something else I'm worried about is Dana. So the anarchists still have Dana's butterfly, but I want to know what Dana and what lengths Dana is going to go to try to get her Renegades team to see that Nova has her butterfly. Like, when Adrian is in the house with her, I'm pretty sure that Nova hides the butterfly that they have in a mason jar, but at the same time, the butterfly's in the mason jar, so the butterfly could just die at any moment because it doesn't have air. But also, like, I don't know, I'm so worried because Dana knows everything. If Dana gets out, then everybody knows everything, and everything is Now that Ruby and Oscar know that Adrian is the Sentinel, do you think that they're gonna tell Nova that Adrian is the Sentinel? Because Nova is an integral part of their unit. Do you think that Adrian might reveal to Nova that he's the Sentinel because Nova is now going to help him find Nightmare? I don't know. If Nova finds out that Adrian is the Sentinel before he finds out that she's Nightmare, I don't know how things are gonna go down. I've always wished for one of those moments where all of the truth comes out at once and he finds out who she is and she finds out who he is at the same time and we see what happens. But it makes more sense for her to find out who he is before vice versa. Her secret is a lot bigger than his secret. So I'm very eager to know how that's going to play out and how Nova, once she knows that Adrian is the Sentinel, and if she knows before he knows what she is, how she's going to use that to her advantage. That I'm very curious about. Also, Max. Max could know who Nightmare is. Max could know Nova's secret identity. Nightmare truly cared about Max and helped him in that moment when he was about to die. And I thought that there was some kind of recognition in his eyes in that moment, if I'm remembering correctly. Curious about that too. What if Max cracks it all? What if this 10-year-old kid just reveals the entire truth about everybody? He knows who Adrian is, he might know who Nova is. Like, what if he is just going to like let loose everything? So guys, thank you so much for sticking with me through that. That was my recap for the last third of Archenemies. If you are as much of a fan of this series as I am, please let me know down below and let me know what your favorite part of this story was. So guys, please don't forget to check out my giveaway on my Instagram if you're interested. Thank you to Fierce Reads for putting on this read along. This has been a lot of fun to reread both of these books to prepare for the third one, and I'm very, very excited to, I don't know, get to it, to get to the third one. I'm so ready. I have been ready. I'm so excited. So I think that's gonna be it. So thank you guys so much for watching this video, and I will catch you later. Goodbye!